Okay. Well, first off, thank you for letting me come and visit you on Friday, and visit your classroom. It was a pleasure to watch you and your kiddos and your interaction with each other. I could instantly see how invested your students are in their learning. You've really created that structure I don't even know how to put it into words, of family in here.
That was what I was going to follow that with. First and foremost, our lesson when we walk through the classroom always is that we are family first, and everything else just falls into place, because once we have that, then we have an investment in a different way, to where everybody is there for each other and not there for themselves, and we're looking at the good of the whole and not independently.
I never heard a student say anything negative about another one.
Absolutely.
Like, everything was positive or feeding off of what another one was saying. It was great to hear. So today we're going to discuss the lesson that I observed, and I want to give you an opportunity to reflect on the lesson and talk about it, and think about the strengths of your lesson. And I saw very many strengths, by the way. So think about an area that you would want to strengthen. Also think about an area you'd want to strengthen, and we'll talk about that at the end.
Okay.
So let's start off with your thoughts on the lesson and reflect back on the lesson. What do you think went really well?
I think because we had been building up to the topic that we were talking about, the students had a lot of background knowledge about it already, so that once we started, it wasn't like the information was coming out of left field. You know, they kind of knew that their schema was there, so we were just building upon that instead of starting from scratch. So
Absolutely. They knew what they were talking about. They recognized this is where we're coming from. This is what we've been talking about, and they could really pull from those prior lessons.
And it's not always easy, because academic vocabulary is a challenge for third graders. It's not something they use all the time. So if they can understand and recognize what I'm talking about, we've had a great day.
And I saw a lot of them, or heard a lot of them using academic language.
Yes.
So that is excellent, and your fourth grade teachers will love that, by the way. But I saw a lot of evidence that speaks to what you just mentioned. One thing I saw that was amazing was that you stated the objective, what the goal was for that day immediately, and you referenced back to that throughout the lesson. Remember, readers, we do, this is what we do. We
talk about characters feeling as well.
Yes, and refer back to the text.
Yes.
To find our evidence for that. Thank you. Sorry. You had higher level questionings. It wasn't just the basic questions, which was excellent. And you were constantly monitoring your students, walking around the room while you were sitting. They were on the carpet. You were watching what they were watching what they were doing, talking with them. And then when they were working in their groups at their tables, you were walking around, monitoring them, having conversations with them, questioning them to make them think further, which was excellent.
I used to hate the idea that we had to post objectives, because I thought that was just another piece of work that I would have to do. But I think that by having to post the objective, it makes us more accountable, which then just assures that we use that language with the students. And so it does give that anchor that we do always refer back to, because it's visual for them and for ourselves. I see it as more for me than for them. And it really has helped me do that in making sure I refer back to what it is that we want to get out of the lesson.
Absolutely. And it allows the kids to see that academic language throughout those days of those lessons. So very good. So at one point of your lesson, when the kids were working in groups, I noticed one of your little girls was struggling, and you had gone over there and you were helping her. She was sitting at this table over here, and you were really scaffolding her, and you were working with her, and at one point you had her go physically walk to that anchor chart and refer back to it and help with her thinking. And that was great. And but tell me, and she ended up mastering. She got it. By the end of that little one-on-one, she understood what her goal was. But what would your steps have been had she not been able to master that concept?
I think we would have particularly looked at the level of the text, because as the text gets more difficult, the skill gets more difficult as well. And because she is a student, particularly that reads below grade level, I think that we would have had to take it down by looking at a different text. Did the text that we used, did it have too much meat to it to where she had to filter through all of that before she could actually apply it to characters and text evidence? Was the text too hard? So I think that we would have had to look at that and maybe pull something that she was already familiar with, that wasn't a new read for the day, or wasn't something that we had already talked about in class, to be able to apply it on a level that was at her level.
Very good, very good. You kind of answered it, but why is that so important to monitor your students' understanding consistently through a lesson?
It's much harder to reteach once they've learned it the wrong way than it is to catch them before they've cemented it and kind of reteach in that moment. So if I would have let her go on and not paid attention and let her think that she was doing it right, she would have thought she had it, and she would have thought she was fine, I can do this, no problems, no questions asked. But by catching it before that, we were able to stop the misunderstanding and catch it before it turned into something that she had already learned.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to shift our focus. Reflect on something that maybe you would have done differently.
One thing that I would have done differently is when they were working within their groups, more group purposeful planning, not necessarily just within their tables, but really maybe ability grouping them a little bit to where I could have focused more on those that struggled deeper than just one-on-one at a time, because it could have been better scaffold if it would have been more purposeful grouping.
So how would you have grouped the kids if you did it prior to the lesson? How would you have done that? What kind of system, I guess, would you have used?
They know, some of them know where they are as far as their reading levels. It's more important for me to know that than for them. They don't really understand the letter system and how it works. But since I know that I could have used their BAS data to decide who would be with who, then they would never know the difference. They would just think that that's how I placed them, you know, that that's the groups that I wanted. So I think I would have used that information to better group them, not necessarily just where you sit, but hey, I want you guys to come here and work together. I want you guys to sit at table 2 and work together.
Absolutely. Okay. So during my observation, I noticed a few students off task. For example, PJ. Tell me a little bit about PJ.
He's new to us. He's a new student to us, and he is actually under the SPED umbrella for a couple of different things. And one of those things does have to do with concentration and focus. And so there are times throughout his day that I do allow him the choice of where he's going to position himself in the classroom, depending on what it is that we're doing. If it's something that I'm confident that he's able to do, then I kind of give him a little bit more freedom with placing himself on the carpet where he wants. But if it's something I'm not sure how good he is, I'm not sure how well he is at that task, he's definitely in the front with me so that I see his eyes on me at all times.
Okay, that makes sense. So he was in the back of the group. So at whole group, I guess, on the carpet is one of the times that he gets to make the choice of where he sits.
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed that during that time, we had a teacher's aide in here come in.
Yes.
Was she here to assist him directly or several different teachers?
She's here for a couple of different students at that time.
Because I did notice that she had shifted over and was kind of helping redirect him.
Right.
So he was messing with something on his leg, and he rarely looked up during the lesson. So not just PJ, but any student. You had one that was braiding the little girl's hair, but he was eyes on you the whole time. But it was funny because he actually he could braid better than me.
Yes.
So I was like, man, okay. And then you had one that you had redirected. He was sitting right next to you. So what are some tools that you can use to help engage students like PJ when they do get off task, besides maybe a teacher's aide?
Right. Well, I think knowing your students is the most important thing, because had I not known him, or even the student that was braiding the hair, not knowing where they are academically or where they are even just in my subject matter, I wouldn't know what are they thinking, can they handle doing that at the same time that I'm doing this. So I think that number one is just knowing my students. If we were starting off first day of school and I didn't, we would make those changes immediately as far as our hands are in our lap. We're not touching anything for both PJ and my braider. But I think just knowing them and knowing what they can handle academically and what they can't kind of allows me to adjust as to what they can do with themselves body-wise while I'm teaching a lesson.
Excellent, excellent. Are there supports that maybe administration can give you that would help with engagement of students who tend to need different ways of helping to stay focused or on task? I don't know if there's anything that would help benefit you.
I think if I was starting out as a new teacher, I would definitely need more support than just I can handle this on my own, because I wouldn't even know what it meant to know my student. What does that mean? You know them as in you can say good morning to them, you know how their day went, or you know them as in you understand where they're reading at, where they are for comprehension wise, where they are as writers, because we always marry reading and writing. Good readers make good writers, good writers make good readers. And so I think because I've had this experience for some time, that I'm, solid in knowing how I can address any concerns that do come up, and making sure that I do address them, holding myself accountable for that. But I think as a new student, I would definitely need some direction. As a new teacher, I'm just not sure. I don't think I would even know what kind of help to ask for, So I think it would really take someone coming in to observe and point out some things that maybe I wasn't seeing. Luckily, I do know them and know what was happening.
Yeah, because as soon as I brought it up, you knew exactly who I was talking about, and so it sounds like you've got some systems in place for those kiddos. So wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks for letting me come
Absolutely,
in. And thanks
anytime.
for meeting with me, and I will shoot you the information we just talked about, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely.